Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Dharma Time here on WPSN99.com. I'm your
You.
host, the Dharma Guy. As always, I'm joined with, let me pull him up here, the Dope Doctor. What's up, man?
Whoop, whoop. Hey, what's up, man?
Not much. First things first, how you feeling? 'Cause I know you were under the weather.
Yeah, I'm alive, Trinity. I'm doing a lot better.
I see that.
Hey, real quick, so my mom and everybody doesn't get scared. All I'm trying to say is that it's interesting when you think, oh yeah, let me just get it now, get it over with, and all that stuff that you may think and say. But as soon as you start having some real symptoms, and I mean, like the fever hits, like all the other symptoms are kind of over. When the fever hits, all of a sudden it starts getting in your head. Oh shit, what if I do
Yeah.
have it? I got to admit, there was a little bit of fear there for a moment. It's not that I'm out of the woods yet because I haven't been
Right.
tested, but
Well, I have my own worries about that, actually. But I'm not going to go into mine because we do have a special guest coming up on the 18th. I'm not going to say any names yet until it's closer to the date because things happen. But
mhm.
we are going to have somebody who I've been wanting on the show for a little while now, who I think is a great guest. But they have their own coronavirus situation that I think is going to make for an interesting topic. So make sure everybody tunes in on the 18th for that one. Should be a good show. While we're at it, as you can see behind his head there, we have a phone number behind him. It's called 833 Now Matters. It's 833 Now Matters. And that, of course, is if you or anybody you know is struggling with the disease of addiction, phone us and we will do our best to help you and get you where you need to be.
Right.
If you don't like talking on the phone, then you can also go to nowmattersmore.org. That's nowmattersmore.org. You can donate there, see what we're all about. You can fill out an application. You can do all sorts of stuff. So that is partially why we're able to do what we do here, and that's our calling, if you will.
I like the way you just said that. Now matters more.
Well, you know why I did that is when we
More.
were at Subaru, the guy said that we both said it so quickly it was hard for people to hear it. So I'm trying to do
Uh,
my best to slow it down and enunciate it.
what does he
Although,
know?
although I would assume if you're watching this program, you've heard us say "now matters more" several times, and it's right behind your head.
The
So
word, the word is right there.
exactly. But hey, you can teach an old dog new tricks, I guess.
I
Anyways,
like you said it. Now matters more.
that's right. It's, enunciating. So,
Yep. Can't even spell enunciating.
all right. So today's show, right? We did not have a show last week because you were just coming back from your vacation over there in New Orleans, which you thoroughly enjoyed. You thought was the best ever.
I did have a good time, but I don't know about
So
best ever.
we gave you an extra day to kind of get back into the flow of things. So this
Yeah.
is our first show in a couple weeks, and I think that
Well,
it's a great
first
show.
time we did the couch live, but
Well, yeah, this show. But so I wanted to do it last week, but we did it this week, and that is the going back to school.
yeah.
Because right now we are, at least here in Florida, and I think we're actually kind of ahead of the curve on that one. I believe we're one of
Yeah.
the first states that goes back. I think a lot of them wait till after Labor Day. So we're essentially the guinea pig here for the rest of the states. It's an interesting time, right? For full transparency, so everybody understands what's happening. Obviously we know about COVID and all the things that are therein. Us being in Florida, we're now essentially ground zero. Like we're the hotbed of it, and our kids have been on essentially summer break for the last couple months. Excuse me, and school's beginning to start. Our original our start date was August 10th, and there's been a lot of debate going on, and I use the word debate very loosely. There's been a lot of argument happening amongst everybody, man. Parents, kids, teachers, government. Like
Yeah.
nobody can agree. The president even came out. He's threatening to pull funding. Like it's
Right.
been quite the hot topic, if you will, as far as the what do we do about going back to school. So in covering that, let me try to cover all the different details that I know of.
Right.
You have the fears of going back to school and making the kids susceptible to not only getting but carrying the disease home to people who might be at a higher risk than they are. Not to mention the teachers and everybody else who is exposed. You also have the other individuals who are saying that hey, it's not that big of a deal. Just put a mask on, go to school, you're fine. So there's that debate happening. So I'll just give my own personal uh, um, experience here and what I had to go through because I have 3 kids still in school. 2 of them are in elementary, and the other one is in high school. And so I'll start with the high school. My daughter is in high school here in Orange County. They have been giving us the options. Like we have a couple options for her. I think it was 3 options. The first option was to go back to school as normal and just follow CDC guidelines. The second option was to withdraw from that school and then enroll her into what's called Florida Virtual Schools, which is like a self-paced kind of online-only virtual classroom. And then the third option was kind of a hybrid where you stay enrolled in that particular high school, but it's done mostly through their program called Launched, I think it is, where it's essentially kind of like a Zoom classroom, and you're attending class and following a bell schedule, but via the computer, and you don't go into school. Original start date was August 10th. They had some votes. They were going to push it back. Last I heard, they have made it to where August 10th, Orange County is going to start a virtual school. And then on August 21st, if you elected to go to school, then that's the date you go to school and everybody else stays home. So they give it, and then they did that because they wanted from the 10th to the 21st to be enough time for everybody to have experience with it, just in case you're forced to do it later on for various reasons. And then
I wish they voted when I did that.
and they gave us a bunch of time to vote. They literally called us every single day to vote. They made sure they did their best to ensure everybody was aware of it and everybody got a chance to vote. And then shockingly, I got the results of those votes, by the way. And I was kind of shocked at the outcome. The overwhelming majority of both students and teachers voted to go back to school as normal. I was shocked on that one. I thought that the votes would be a little bit different. And then
You thought they wanted to stay home?
yeah, I thought more people would want to stay home. And then and so for my 2 little ones, then the ones who are in a charter school, slightly different. They gave us 4 options. First option, go back to school as normal, follow CDC guidelines. And what I mean by that is just social distancing, masks, things of that nature. The second option was mobile only, staying home, using the computer, doing mobile classrooms, things of that nature. And then the third and fourth options were like a hybrid, right? Where you would go to school on, I think it was 3 days out of the week, and then be off and mobile 2 days out of the week. And so the 2 options were like on Monday, Tuesday, off the rest of the week, and then flip-flop. So basically it was just a hybrid of some days on, some days off. Yeah,
How do you remember Trinity? I mean, God,
because that's all I've been doing.
Yeah.
It's all I've been doing. And the reason why we're covering this today, obviously, is it's important for everybody. It's a topic of conversation. But I also think there's a spiritual component to it. I really do. I think there's some spirituality involved in it. And what I mean by that is just the way we view it, and the way we handle it, the way we respond to it. I think it's very easy to get caught up in emotions. I think it's very easy to get into judgmental things.
Yeah.
So I'm doing my best to try to handle this in a more skillful manner. And maybe by us talking about it, it will help other people deal with it in a skillful manner as well.
Right.
So having said that, we've had debates in this house even. Like, for my 2 younger ones, I have co-parenting. I have an ex who they go back and forth between the homes. And so she has a say-so as well. In her house, there's a few people there that are considered high risk. In my own home, myself and my wife are both considered high risk for various medical conditions. And then my mother is as well. And so there's a very real reason to have this debate in both of our homes. And we've all elected to keep all 3 of them home for as long as we can until we see how this kind of plays out. We felt that was the right decision. I personally was kind of on the fence, I guess. But I think that's where the spirituality comes into it, I guess, is trying to understand and appreciate everybody's perspective. And I don't think that's, as a society, we don't seem to be very good at that at the moment in various topics, including this one. So now that I've flattened my gums a little bit, what are your initial thoughts with everything? Like, where are you standing at, right? Because you have kids who are out of public school, but they're in college, right, or no?
Right.
So
right.
Where's your house stand on things?
So my daughter's, wait, which question are you asking? Where I stand or where my house stands? Because that could be different. So first of all, the fact that people voted to go back to school doesn't surprise me, Trinity, because I think most people don't like who they live with. Uh, most people want to get out. Uh, I think that's just proof and evident of so many things.
Sure.
Um, and I don't mean it in a mean way, but I think everyone gets tired of their same surroundings after a while. Anyway, uh, I personally kind of have enough places to go around in my house that if my wife gets tired of me, she can go somewhere. I can go
You have a
somewhere.
bunch of decking that you can disappear on,
Yeah, a
so
lot of little places, but if I was at the last house, it'd be a little bit more frustrating. I'll tell you that one.
see
But
that.
I like messing around. But all right, so I don't have a kid in the fight. I don't have kids, but I do have kids in college, and you know what? Colleges are doing a lot of the same things too. Um, I
Yeah,
have
I don't know what colleges are doing.
my oldest is in UCF, and UCF has already went predominant, or not predominantly, but a great deal of their courses are now available online anyway.
Okay.
So that didn't affect her. Um,
Was she already taking online before all this happened?
yes.
Okay. I didn't know
Uh,
that.
yeah, yeah, it's weird. It's weird, man, to be that far into your college career, junior year, and you do mostly online. It's weird. It takes away from the experience. I would think she loves it. Um, so the because the experience that they really want is not necessarily the classes and everything, like going there and showing up. It's the
Right.
games,
Right.
you know. So, and then my youngest is has already started FAU already. So
Really?
she's yeah, yeah. As soon as
Wow.
she yeah, before even her graduation from high school, she started doing summer at FAU. So she's been doing that online.
Wow. Okay.
And so she's already doing online. However, since she's going to go live in a dorm and go live in Boca, she's all about leaving. She's much done with being around us full time.
Sure.
You know, she wants the whole idea of being grown and
Sure.
coming back home to visit much instead
Sure.
of being here all the time. So it's really cool to watch her do all that. But she really, really hates any discussion about having to stay here another semester and do it online, which is a possibility. They haven't said
Right.
that it's not. We'll find out this weekend. We're actually going to go travel to Boca and go visit the school and do the whole deal this weekend.
Right.
But my niece, she's not going back to California. She's actually, online courses instead of going back to Cali.
Wow.
Uh, so that may very well happen with Zoe as well. But if I had kids in your age group, I got it. I must admit, I'd want them to go back to school. I'm not set up, prepared, or do I really want to be the teacher for my kids? If I was, I would just put them in virtual homeschool from the beginning, and that way.
I agree
Um,
with all that, by the way.
yeah, I think that there is a real fear, and I think your scenario and your situation is different than most families. I think that you have some valid points as to why you would probably want them to go not go to school.
Right.
We don't have that.
Sure.
The risk factors in my household are very different, and my fear of getting COVID is very different than the risks that you carry. So I think that matters.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I made the decisions I made. My initial voting on the and this, like I said, this is where the spirituality comes in, right? For
Right.
me personally, I tend to be more optimistic. I tend to be what I feel to be more reasonable about things, and I try
Mm.
to kind of go down the middle. So while I respect and appreciate the severity of what COVID is doing to our population,
Right.
I also think that there are reasonable things that you can do to make yourself less susceptible. I'm a very firm believer we still got to live our life.
Yeah.
However, I got to realize I'm not the only vote. Now I don't make my house. It's not necessarily a democracy, but it has democratic ways. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, somebody has to make decisions. But I decided to reach out to my ex and ask her because I don't know everybody in her household and what their situations are. I do know a couple of them, and I know some of them have some relatively severe medical concerns that would raise their risk. And then in my own home, my wife hasn't been to work in quite some time. She's getting ready to go back soon. She's at a very high risk. I'm coming to find out, the more I'm reading and the more I'm talking to my doctors, I'm apparently at a much higher risk than I originally thought. And when I say higher risk, all that means, from what my understanding is, we're not at any higher risk of catching it, but we are at a higher risk of being hospitalized when we do catch it. Meaning, the average individual, if they catch it, they're more likely to kind of be fine with it, and just 90% of the population is they catch it,
Right.
they're good to go. It's that 8 to 10% of the population that gets it that is there's other complications due to medical concerns already in existence that
Right.
mean that this is devastating when you catch it. You're not able to bounce back the way you're supposed to, and it's more likely to, if not kill you, at least put you in a hospital for quite some time and make it very difficult.
And that's the hard part, that COVID mortality privilege that
Yeah,
young people have, that not everybody
yeah.
has that.
And so I had to take those things into consideration. I had to, first of all, I had to humble myself and realize that I'm not the Superman that I once was. I had to realize that, I'm getting older. I'm having medical things now that I never had to deal with. And as much as I want to put on the Superman suit and walk out and think I'm invincible, I'm not. And I have children that I don't want my children to have to grow up without a father because I was too bullheaded.
All right.
And then I also have a mother who is, because of her age and because of other medical concerns, is
All
at
right.
risk. And I don't want to have to make it to where she can't see her grandchildren. I don't want her to have to make the decision of, do I risk death or do I see my grandkids? Like, I don't want
Yeah.
her to have to make that decision
Right.
because I know what her decision would be. Her decision would be, I want to see my grandkids. And then the same thing with my wife. I finally found somebody that I wanted to marry in my life. I don't want her to go away. And so, I've had to step back and be a little bit more logical and less emotional about it. My emotions tell me, go back to school, you're fine. Just put a mask on, you're good to go. But my logic and everything else says, no, there's actual concerns here that I have to pay attention to. So
Yeah.
I agree with you, though. I'm not a teacher for a reason. I think it's very difficult to corral 3 kids in multiple different grades all at once and keep them on. Like, it's a very stressful scenario
Yeah.
to be put in, and it's hard to handle skillfully. It really truly is. It creates stress on so many different levels, and none of the kids understand it. None of the kids want to do it. So it is not a fun environment. But I have to weigh the pros and cons, and for me, like I said, I have to be reasonable here, and none of those things I just mentioned are worth dying for. And so that's why we decided to keep them home. And I think for anybody who's watching this, if you're having that debate, like, first thing I would do is encourage you to put the hubris down, right, and really kind of just take an honest look at things, and assess your own level of risk as far as you and your closest family members, and try to make the best decision possible. But more importantly, don't judge anybody else for the decisions that they made. Like, don't get mad at your neighbor because they decide to send their kids to school. Like, you don't know their situation. You don't know what their levels of acceptable risk are. You don't know their specific circumstances.
Yeah.
They might not be in a position to where they could, even though they want to keep them at home. Like, some people have to go to work. Some people don't have the ability to have. I mean, there's various different reasons. And so I think that in today's climate, we got to be very careful in these knee-jerk reactions that we seem to be doing as a society, where something takes place that doesn't necessarily fit within our perfect little box that we think it should, and then we chastise anybody out there without understanding that our perspective isn't necessarily right or wrong, it's just different, and without understanding the context in which we're seeing everything. We're seeing like a small window of somebody's overall life, and it creates so much more tension. And to be honest with you, in this particular case, who's really going to lose is everybody, right? I mean, the kids are going to be an attention-filled thing. The kids are going to be obviously put in the middle if adults start arguing about this and fighting over this. And in your own home, it's just not worth the destruction that it could cause. So I encourage everybody to stop and kind of take a breath, and really approach this in the most skillful way possible.
And I guess what I'm also hearing you say is that your decision is not based on politics, whereas
No.
someone may automatically assume that, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if someone would hear you say, look, I'm choosing to vote to not send my kids to school, you might start hearing some hoax stuff, or,
Yeah. Oh,
stuff
I've
from
already
the
heard it.
other side, thinking
Yeah,
that
I've already heard it.
that you're being leftist. I think you brought up something that sparked a point in my head, and I don't know exactly what you said that did it, but I started thinking about the guilt that a young person can feel if someone should get sick in their home. Let's say you're a young child and you do go to school, and let's say you're a young child like me who breaks rules while you're at school and pushes boundaries and doesn't take it serious while you're at school, and then you come home knowing you touched things, or you didn't wear the mask all the time like you were supposed to. You were being a little rebellious and you thought it was really cool, and then not that it's your fault, but something happens to somebody within your household and they get COVID and they end up dying from it. I could see myself being that kid that would then feel like,
Yeah.
crap, did I do that? Because
Yeah.
you don't know how they got
Yeah.
it or
You
where
never
they
know.
got it. But then feeling like, is it because I begged my parents, let me go to school, let me go to school, let me go to school. Then they therefore voted to let me go to school. And then COVID got in my house. And then someone thinks, well, it's because your kid went to school. And I start thinking it's because I went to school. And then I broke the rules.
Right.
That could be pretty traumatic
Yeah.
to a young person. And should kids go to school, there's got to at least be one child that's going to get that scenario played out.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Like, well, I think of my own daughter, right? My 16-year-old, probably one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. She's like a little hippie kid, right?
Yeah. But she doesn't want to go to school, I'm sure.
Yes, she does. Oh yeah.
She does?
Yes. She wants out of the house, dude.
Oh, wait, she just wants to get out of
She
the
wants out of the
house.
house. She lives in prison, according to her. Like this is we're the worst parents ever on history of Earth.
I love it.
As she storms into her very own room with her own PlayStation and her own phone and her computer and her big screen TV to talk about how horrible she has it in life. Anyways, I digress.
She
But
doesn't want to go to school. She just doesn't want to be home.
exactly.
That's how most people are voting this
And she wants to
year.
be with her friends and things of that nature. And even here, she's constantly asking for her friends to come over, and we're like, "Hey, we
That's funny.
can't." But
That's,
I use her as an example, right? I know who she is deep down. She's a sweetheart. She's a little hippie kid, and I think at 16, we both know that the brain isn't done developing, and the last part is the one that says, "Hey, if I do this, then this happens."
yeah.
And so I don't think she's able to comprehend fully the potential ramifications of her behavior at the moment. And so she's wanting to go do things that come off very like, dude, you don't get it. Well, just because she really doesn't. She's not even capable of truly getting it. But knowing her the way I do, if she did go to school and catch it and survive, but come home and kill off either myself or her mom or whatever,
Yeah.
that would devastate her.
The way you said it. She's the way you said it. She kills off her mom. That's
How it
wow.
would be perceived from her.
That's how she would probably view
Yeah,
it.
she would think, oh my God, because if it was proven that she caught it because she was hanging out with friends and nobody else here had it, and she came home and then we caught it and we died, I don't see how. Obviously, I'm an optimist, but I'm going to say a very hyperbolic statement here. I don't see how she could ever get over that. And even if she did, quote unquote, get over it with years of therapy or whatever, it would forever change her, though. It would forever scar her. Like, she would have to, and she would grow up without parents. And so I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that.
Well, that's the unspoken tragedy that's already happening, right? There's a lot of young people out there that are having their parents have it,
Yeah.
or their parents have it that they have contact with, and all they hear on the news and in out there is that young people are the ones going out there and being careless about it and bringing it home. So there's a lot of young people already suffering this kind of guilt.
Yeah.
So
I've seen there was a story on not too long ago where there was a younger individual who had plenty of videos out there saying this was all fake, this was all a hoax, it's not true. He's now dead from COVID. And apparently one of his last words he said while he was in the hospital was, "I guess I was wrong." And what a horrible way to find out you're wrong. You know what I mean? Like that's how the world works, right? Is it's not convenient sometimes to find out you were wrong. And I think that's why we always encourage to err on the side of caution, you know what I mean? And take risks that are worth taking. I know that, I understand the whole, and I was one of them when this first started happening. As far as I would come up with the statistics for flu virus, 30 to 50,000 people dying of the flu. Like this isn't new or whatever. But it's been my understanding as I look further into it. Once again, when I have to put my hubris aside, right? Like I have to, okay, maybe I don't know everything.
hubris.
Yeah, the cockiness, the arrogance, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you.
My point is we tend as species we tend to walk around thinking we've got it all figured out. We already know it, and that's the stance that we typically come from, right? Is we don't listen as much as we should because we think we already know, and so I came from the stance of not that it's a hoax, but it's a little blown out of proportion. It was a little excessive, a little bit unnecessary. And I'm not willing to say it is or isn't at the moment. I think each individual has to decide that. But what I have learned when I did step aside and just start looking at things and reading things, it is a very serious thing that we're dealing with here. It's
Right.
more serious than the flu because it's not that it's killing off masses of people, because it's not. But the population that is at risk, they're in a lot of risk. Like, in other words, it's not going to kill everybody. It's not going to hurt everybody. Most people who do it are going to be fine. Who get it are going to be fine for the most part. But there is a segment of the population that if they do catch it, it's pretty much deadly. I think the numbers are like 20% or something for that population. And once again, even if I was 18, I probably wouldn't care, right? Because I was 18. But as an adult who is now in that population, not because of my age, but because of medical things, and I'm surrounded by a lot of the people that I love and care about who are also in that, it's a very real thing that you have to wrap your head around, is our mortality, right? Like, at 18, I was out there doing wheelies at 100 plus miles an hour and doing all sorts of stunts. I didn't care. I was like, yeah, my whole thing was, if I die, at least I lived my life, kind of thing. But at almost 40 now, my vision of mortality has evolved, and now I don't want to live. I want to see my children grow, and I want my mom to see my children graduate, and all these other wonderful things, and this is a very real possibility that could put that to a halt. And so I think we do have to take it seriously. I think it's dangerous to chalk it up to a hoax, right? I think that's a dangerous mindset to have. I also think it's a dangerous mindset to have, to think that this is the sky's falling and we're all going to die tomorrow as well. Like, I think there's a middle ground somewhere. Obviously, that's the spiritual side of me coming out, the middle ground. But I think that's a reasonable take to have.
My true problem with it is that I don't think that they know enough. And if they do, we don't know it.
Yeah.
And not that I'm one of those that believe that we're on a need-to-know basis. I'm not one of these fools that believe we need to know everything the government knows, because I think that's
freak out, dude.
Ridiculous. Yeah. There's no way that we should know everything the government knows.
We can't handle that.
Not only can we not handle it, but then it takes all the strategy out of the play. And being the world power, there's a lot of strategy that's at play.
Right.
But what I'm thinking here is that we have systems set up for a reason. I think we have a really good ability to do schools where kids are at home. I think we have real good ability to have schools where kids are at alternative places. Let's say they're not at your home, but alternative places. I think we have the property. I think there's a lot of buildings. I think there's a lot of institutions. I think there's a lot of venues that, should we strategically need to do something like this, we can do it. I think the problem is we haven't done any of it.
And that's just in your portfolio, too.
I just think that we just haven't done any of it, right? I mean, we just haven't.
We've gotten complacent, for sure.
It seems like schools have just been waiting to say, well, let's see how things happen, and then we'll figure out what happens. Well, let's see what happens next month. Let's see what happens next month. We have an academic system that hasn't really fully prepared for this situation, whereas why don't we call them out a little bit and say, listen, why don't you prepare for the new normal? The new normal is the way you have bunched up individuals and the way learning has been. It's not going to be that way. It's probably not going to be that way for the next several years, because, first of all, we don't know how long this is going to last. It should have stopped, when we got into the hotter months. It didn't do that. Right. And now we're already getting closer to the fall months and the winter months again, and we still haven't figured this one out.
Yep.
Then when we do have a vaccine, you're going to have half the population not believe in the vaccine or not even want the
They're already saying that, yeah.
Yeah. Then you're going to try to force it down people. So it's going to. This is not ending.
No.
This is going to be a conversation and debate ongoing. So I think just like we had, internet cafes before, I think we're going to have satellite school options. I think you're going to have places where people can go to the cubicles and be in school but not be at school for the next year or so. And you should start figuring that out, school systems, because not everybody's going to be okay with sending their kids to an overcrowded schools. Remember, there used to be an overcrowding. Schools have overcrowding, and then they started buying all the portables.
Still kind of is, to be honest with you. It's like 30 kids to one teacher sometimes.
In some areas. But then, one of the things that helped that is all these satellite-type schools, right? All these charter schools. Yeah. But now everybody wants a charter school, so now the charter schools are full.
Yeah.
So the people that are probably really okay with this are all the people that didn't believe in the public school system in the first place, or could afford private schools or homeschooling. Remember, all the hardcore Christians got really upset when they stopped being allowed to pray in schools and all the stuff that they used to do. So they started doing a lot of homeschooling and have all these homeschool groups. they're set up probably the best
Yeah.
for this
And
scenario.
homeschooling is actually so much better than it ever used to be. I looked into it when my kids
It's
started going to
amazing.
school. The curriculums that they
Amazing.
have are phenomenal.
It's amazing, and those kids are starting to show
Yeah.
that it was a good idea because of their test scores,
Yep.
because how they're performing in college, their acceptability into
Yep.
college, their desire to move on to higher learning. The universities are all set up for a homeschooling
Yep.
now. Why? Because money.
Yeah.
They're able to charge the exact same thing per credit hour,
Yeah.
yet
Yep.
teach more kids
Yep.
than in a little classroom. So financially, for universities, this is beautiful. There's nothing better for a university than having students all over the world to be able to be there in a school and never having to come into the classroom or have to do very little classroom. So that is the wave of the future.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to be set up quicker, sooner, faster. And unfortunately, people like yourself are going to be the guinea pigs to how this can work for lower ages.
You said something that I wanted to comment on because I found it ironic, right? And then I'm going to touch on Enrique's comment as well.
Okay.
So you mentioned about the vaccine, right? And how there's going to be people who are for it, against it, and question it or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
I don't know if you're aware of like some of the vaccination issues that are taking place in like the Middle East. We've essentially gotten rid of polio pretty much everywhere, except for in the Middle East. There's a lot of debate happening there where they're trying to administer the polio vaccinations, and the public is just very distrusting. They don't want their kids to be shot up with things, and rightfully so, right? I mean, when you're under the regimes that they've been under a lot of times, it doesn't create an atmosphere of trust. But
Yeah.
what I think is interesting is how unself-aware we are in this country, because we oftentimes look at them like they're so far behind us and they're so backwards, and how could they not? Because we are so accepting to polio. Now, granted, you have the anti-vaxxers here, but they're seen largely as crazy people. But I'm seeing a lot of people right now with this particular vaccination of the COVID kind of doing the same thing. It's like we're so busy laughing at those countries for being so backwards and not getting it, and yet we're doing the exact same thing here. And so I think that's where, at least, like I said, the perspectives, we got to kind of take a hard look at ourselves. Like this, to me, this entire thing from a sociological perspective has been a very interesting experiment. And we failed miserably, right? Like, using Enrique's point, I'll put this on the screen real quick. It kind of echoes this. He says, Trinity, that is a huge point. This is for sure a good time for learning and practicing the life management skill of being able to place ourselves in someone else's shoes before judging their course of action. And that's the thing, right? Like, we've come so far and yet we haven't, right? We've come so far as a society, but I'm seeing our lizard brains coming out more and more, right? We're all just reacting to things, and then we're judging other people for how they react and whatnot. And I think that's a very sad place to be. I think it's a scary place to be because I don't know where it's all going to end. And I think that's where the skillfulness comes in. I think that, if anything, this has taught us that we have so much more to go before we can call ourselves, quote unquote, civilized societies.
Right.
Because they're talking about vaccines. They've got like a couple of them that they're already talking about, which to me sounds like good news. But then right behind that, I have a bunch of people saying that they question it. They think Bill Gates is trying to take over the world and all this stuff. It's like, what? It sounds a bit absurd to me.
Yeah. And if it's true, God bless them. Take it over, brother.
Right? Like,
you can run it better than I can. I guess the real issue is that the larger our cities become, the less community we are.
yeah.
And so I would urge anyone that is feeling distrusting of their community or their government. I've said this so many times throughout this whole political battle, is shrink it down to your local community government. And that's where you have your sense of control and knowledge. Now, within your own community, that's what you can control. That's what you can handle. If it's overwhelming you and it's causing fear and anxiety to think beyond your local community, then don't. You have a choice to not. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of layers in place that even if at the toppest level of government a decision is made, there's at least 10 other hands and signatures that have to take place before it even touches your local community. So even when that's done, it doesn't reach the bottom if somebody in your local area does something wrong, incorrect, doesn't dot the I, doesn't cross the T on a certain document, or doesn't request it properly. So The real issue is, how are you managing your home? And when we're talking about this, Trinity, when you're talking about, do we send our kids to school or not, I urge people to just think about their own personal home and think about their neighbor's home and just get it. Just understand that some people are in your situation where there's other risk factors, and because there's so many unknown variables, it's just not worth the risk for your household.
Yep.
And so if you're out there and you're shaming people for making your decision, or the opposite, shaming people for making the other decision, just understand that everybody has a voice. And that's the beautiful thing about a democracy.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about a place where you do have freedom of voice, that to allow people to have their voice heard. It may be different than your opinion, it may be different than what you want to hear, but they should all be heard. Now, at the end of the day, the fact that they even allowed you to vote on it says a lot for our communities, right?
Yeah.
That, how does a school system, which typically I've never viewed school systems as a democracy.
No, they're not flexible at all.
As given a crap what parents wanted or kids wanted. Hell, you heard me rant on this very show not too long ago when they were talking about my daughter's graduation, of how I felt about school representatives. But the fact that they even allowed a vote, I do have to give them props. So if I'm going to yell at them for one issue, I got to praise them for another issue. They at least called you or asked you for a vote, and I think that's really cool. The fact that they offered 3 different options.
Yeah. I agree. It definitely it did put the onus on us a little bit. And while we're talking about that, though, I do want to point out something else. Like I want to address something else. Like,
okay,
I feel like we got to be the grown-ups in the room sometimes, and what I mean by that is
me and you,
which is freaking weird, right? Like I never thought I'd be the grown-up in the room, but I see so much, and it could just be anecdotal. It could just be my little world, I guess. But I do try to get outside my own little community a little bit and look around, and I see a lot of anger directed towards people, meaning, people are angry about the people who are wearing masks because they think that they're quote unquote sheep and they're just following along. I see the other people mad at the people not wearing masks because they're mad at them for also being sheep and just blindly ignoring
same
it.
Exact statements.
Same statements.
Yep.
And then so when it comes to school, even same thing. There's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to ridicule those who send their kids back to school, right? And what I'm getting at is the thing that I hear a lot, and this is where I'm trying to put some shame here, I guess. I hear a lot of people say that they hope they get it, or good for them kind of a thing, if they get sick or something happens, because like that whole "you should have known better" type thing. And if you're one of those people who thinks that somebody who's not wearing a mask should get sick, or if you're one of those people who think that they sending their kids to school should get sick or whatever, good for them, shame on you. Just seriously, because there is no right or wrong here. There is no proven blueprint that has been 100% categorically this is how you're doing it, and people are knowingly going against it. No, it's all up in the air. Nobody knows, and we're all doing the best we know how to do. Everybody's making the best decisions that they know how to make. Now, some people have more information than others. Some people have more fluid systems of figuring out those things than other people for various different reasons. But nobody's doing it with a malicious intent. They're doing the best that they can based upon what they have available. And when you say that you hope that they get sick, realize what you're saying. You're saying that they hope they potentially die. That's pretty harsh to me. For somebody who's just going to do something that you disagree with, you have no proof that your way is right or wrong. You just simply have an opinion, and because they don't share your opinion and don't behave the way you think they should behave, you're wanting death to potentially happen to them. So like if I were to send my kids to school, you're potentially wanting my children now to grow up the rest of their lives without my influence as their father and have to go through the tragedy of losing their dad because I did something you disagreed with, or whomever. When you put it in that context, it sounds like an asshole thing to do. And that's because it is an asshole thing to do. Like, that is just wrong on so many different levels. I think somebody posted something the other day which I thought was brilliant, and I'm going to steal now, and that is stop expecting you from others. And that's a big one, right? Like, stop expecting you from everybody you see. They're not. And when you participate in this idea that good for them, or they should have known better. That's what they get. What you're basically saying is, I'm perfect. I've never made any mistakes, and everybody else who's made one mistake should die. That's what you're kind of saying, because you yourself have made numerous mistakes in your lives as well that you've clearly gotten over because you're alive right now. Would you want to die because you made a mistake, or you misread a situation, or you responded unskillfully to something? No, man, it's called being human. Like, that's the curse that we have of being, that's the human condition, is we make mistakes. We misread situations. And in theory, they're humble enough to where we learn from those, and we modify our behavior, or we grow, or we evolve moving forward. Nobody's ever grown from winning all the time, right? You've never learned anything by doing everything right every day. You've made mistakes, and that's how you've learned. And so to essentially wish death on somebody because they decided they didn't want to wear a mask, or they didn't believe certain things, or they decided to send their kid to school, like, shame on you. Don't be that person. That I think need to be said, because I see so much of that where they get so caught up in anger that they emotionally lash out by saying things like "good for you" or "I hope you get it," and that's just, I don't think they realize what they're stating. I think they're caught up in the moment and they don't understand what you're truly saying to those people.
And it's even bigger than that. I'm glad you said that, because it's even bigger than that, because I've seen some of those statements, and I think it's cumulative Trinity, because I think that, first of all, and again, I don't want to take this political, but I think even this issue has become already political. And so there are people, and I didn't think that we were going to have people that actually want our country or our president to fail, but I think there were people that are happy with every failure that our country has received ever since this particular president has been in office. And then when our economy got better, I think there were people that were hoping it actually tanked. And then out came COVID, and so it tanked. And I actually had someone in my house that was a professor of sorts in my house. You know, these are very learned individuals that actually said, I'm glad that the economy and the unemployment is what it is through all this, because then he cannot say that he was better than Obama in this. And it was hard to hear. It was hard to hear the statement.
It's pretty,
you know
brutal.
What I mean? From a very educated individual, from a very well-educated individual, to say that he was happy that we were doing poorly financially and that people were out of work and that people were struggling. And then when you see the COVID cases increase, to see people go, I'm glad that they're not saying it, but it just allows them then to say, see, because they did it wrong, or because they didn't act properly, or they didn't do something right, this is how bad it got. And so this is cumulative. So now, on to your point, where now people are saying, well, then if you go back to school or you don't wear a mask, you deserve to get sick and you deserve to have it. This is just a cumulative effort of just pointing at other individuals and saying, I am happy for every negative thing that has happened to you because it's your fault you had it. Now, here's why I'm guilty. If you have ever driven near my car and almost clipped me or did something that was very dangerous to me, I did think, good luck in the future. I hope you go there and get a ticket in front of me or something. I did wish bad upon you.
Sure.
But
I mean, we're all guilty of pettiness, man.
I know, but I'm going to take your statement, because it's not a good thing spiritually to feel.
Yeah.
But I'm guilty of it. So the only reason I'm saying it out loud is because I'm going to take it as a lesson of what you just said and try to use it then when it's less severe.
Yeah.
And by less severe, I'm meaning it doesn't accumulate. So hopefully in this situation, I don't do it here.
Right.
So if we practice it in those small moments,
I agree,
where we don't wish harm upon others just because they harmed us or did us wrong, or, they stole from me, so I hope they get stolen from. They hurt me, so I hope they get hurt. They lied to me, so I hope somebody lies to them. They cheated on me, so I hope someone cheats. If we stop doing that in our lives in other areas, and this is where I'm taking it spiritually, right? So if we stop doing it in those little moments, maybe in this bigger moment, we don't do it. But what I'm seeing is that we've become so accustomed to doing it in those little moments, and we've been so accustomed to doing it in this political atmosphere, that I think that's why this political shaming and bullying of those that aren't wearing their mask or aren't doing what they have to do is big. And here I was, brother, I was in New Orleans with my family. We had our masks on, and we got ridiculed, I don't know how many times, by people without their mask that thought it was ridiculous. Yeah. And then, so it goes both ways. There's no one side that's correct. I'm just saying it goes both ways on this. So thank you for bringing that point up. But I think what needed to be said is we needed use it in these little moments. Because if
Yeah.
you're out there going, oh, I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't do that. No, no, no. Like you said, we all do it. But you got to find in your life where you do it and tell yourself, okay, I'm going to take this Dharma Time lesson, this Dharma Guy lesson, and I'm going to apply it here so that when I'm in this situation, I don't do it.
Yeah, because I once heard that whole situation. The way I best heard it kind of explained, if you will, was like a bully type situation, where somebody's being a bully, that they then want to go ridicule and bully that other person. And I was like, and the way it was explained essentially was, do you really think you need to do that? Like, do you not think that that person was already tough enough on themselves, which is why they're bullying in the first place? Like, they're not a well-adjusted person. They're obviously dealing with pain and trauma. The last thing they need is somebody else to put even more pain and trauma on them. Typically, what that bully needs, as much as we as a society wants this tit for tat thing, is to go punch him in his face. What he really needs is probably a hug. You know what I mean? He needs to be loved in some sort of way, which is the way he'll stop all that. But
FYI, I'm punching the Trinity.
yeah, I get you. I know. We all have our own levels of pettiness.
I'm not that here. But
And I don't know if I am or not
I
either.
get your point. But I get your point.
I don't know if I am or not either. But like the interesting thing is while we're on the topic, and it's it still fits. I was watching this show on Netflix about inside the world's toughest prisons and stuff,
Right.
and it was this guy who's going in. He stays in like a week in some of these prisons, and some of them are just wow, like takes human rights violations to a level I didn't know existed. But they also covered some other ones. It was very controversial. I think it was like Norway. I think it was Norway. It could have been one of those Scandinavian countries where it appeared at face value almost like a 5-star resort that they were going to for prison. And in me, the knee-jerk reaction, especially here in America, is, oh, hell no. Like, you need to be punished kind of a thing. But they're all about rehabilitation. They're saying, look, your punishment is that you were in prison. That's already punishment enough. We're trying to rehabilitate you. We're trying to, at some point, you're going to serve your sentence, and you're going to go back to your communities, and I want to train you to be a neighbor that I would want to live next to. If I just do nothing but punish you the entire time, when you get out, you're just going to be all more hardened criminal. Right. And I think my wife and I were talking about that because it fits with what we're talking about. We were discussing it, and the philosophical debate that we were having was just, could that happen here? And I told her no. It couldn't happen here without changing a lot. Because we're very much a John Wayne kind of, type Rambo type society where you wrong me, I'm going to wrong you back, and vindication,
Yeah.
What is that? An eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. And so, and I gotta admit, dude, I grew up that way. There's still a major part of me that I have to fight back on a consistent basis that feels that way. That's what spirituality did for me. And that's why I'm able to look at people without a mask or people who send their kids to school with a little bit more compassion than I did previously. Is because I did learn the hard way. I had to really work on that in the sense of, everybody deserves love, man. Everybody deserves compassion. We're all doing our best, dude. And we get confused on what best looks like. And I can't get mad at somebody for being confused when I myself was confused my entire life.
Here's the problem. We've always been in balance, I think, or at least for the most part, we've been in balance because for as many of us that were in that eye for an eye thing, there were always those that would turn the other cheek or whatever, that whole thing, right? But now those turn the other cheek people are now the eye for an eye people.
Yeah, everybody's hitting each other now.
Yeah. So the problem is that when you start reacting, and we have a lot of people reacting right now, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, they've just been seriously reacting. Now we're off balance because there's a whole segment of society that used to at least counterbalance some of that, and now there's no counterbalance. Now everybody's just reacting. So now we have everybody kind of behaving similarly. Everybody's pointing to the other people and saying, "Look how stupid you are." Look here. And so when they see a story that shows the other side's stupidity, they share it with others and go, "Look, there it is." Yeah. But I tell you, there's more stupidity for you. Yeah. And so in this case, where we're having to send our children into the classrooms and thing, I'm even seeing that. I saw a post. It was incredible. I saw a post, and I don't know if you saw it, right? So I'm just going to talk about it and see if you saw it, where a mom was showing her little kid who her new kindergarten teacher was going to be, or his kindergarten teacher was going to be, and it was Donald Trump. He goes, "Look, here's your kindergarten teacher for this year." The kid started crying and saying, "He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy." How does a kindergartner think that or feel that? And she thought it was funny to just antagonize him and then finally go, no, I was kidding. But it was funny enough to post and funny enough to share to the world, because hilarious. And I'm thinking, wow, man, here we talk about trauma, traumatizing. We don't know how. Look, just because you don't think something is abuse doesn't mean the person doesn't take it as abuse. Just because you don't think it's traumatic doesn't mean that it's not traumatic. So those of us in the therapeutic world have been having to teach that, learn that, and counsel people through that, because everybody's trauma is different and how they accept it is different. There's no way to define abuse other than by that person's individual definition. And yet here we have our supposedly woke audience doing that just to prove a political point. And it's like, damn it, man. This has to stop. Your political ranting has to stop, because here Trinity and his family, just like maybe a lot of your families, are in a situation where you're having to make a decision. Do I send my kid to school? Do I not send my kids to school? You have to analyze that and assess that from the safety of your family, regardless of what you believe. Because here's what you need to believe: that you don't know because they don't know. You don't know how dangerous it is out there because guess what? They don't know how dangerous it is out there. Nobody knows how dangerous it is out there. As soon as they said it doesn't last on surfaces as long as you think it is, everybody started touching shit. When we thought it was on every surface, people were wearing gloves. Yeah. You notice everybody's wearing masks that has to wear masks, but they're not wearing gloves. Why? Because they said it wasn't on surfaces. Now they started saying all kinds of stuff. So we have these flocks of individuals that do what they tell you. So this is the Rage Against the Machine stuff. Here's the facts. The real facts is there's people like your wife, Trinity, all over. There's people that have cancer. There's people that are cancer survivors. There are people that have all kinds of debilitating diseases, where there's so many people like my father who has, what is the respiratory thing? Now I'm forgetting it right when I'm speaking.
COPD?
COPD. So for their sake, we just need to be a little bit more understanding that we don't know enough to feel fully secure in any direction. But I tell you what's really guiding this vote in the first place is convenience. Because I don't give a damn what anybody really says. At the end of the day, we vote based on our convenience or our pocketbook more than our health. You know it and I know it. Because if we made decisions based on health, we'd be getting that tooth extracted, or we'd be going to the dentist as often as we're supposed to, or we'd be getting the check. No, we make decisions on money, based on money and convenience. So if me educating my children at my house is not convenient, or if it costs me different money, that's how I'm going to vote. The third is going to be health. Right. Luckily, in your household, you guys are truly awaken in the right way. You're awoke, or however frick you say it, in the correct way. And you guys are making decisions based on certain individuals within your guys' homes that their life is worth paying attention to.
Yeah, because it's definitely not convenient. It's not fun. It's not convenient.
And it's not financially a good decision.
No.
You made it based on health. And I hope, and I hope more people take that kind of note, because that's the way we should be making decisions.
And real quick, Simon commented on our previous one. It says, he said, tit for tat is a winning strategy in game theory, both bad for bad and good for good in reaction to other events. And I'm going to touch on that real quickly before we start to do our wrap up. I think that's part of the problem, right? Like, once again, that's what spirituality gave me. I think each one of us, we have this tendency to walk around as if we are the ones to determine what's good or bad, what's right or wrong. And I think that's where the fault lies. In this spirituality, we have a thing called karma, right? And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to stick with our definition or my accepted definition of karma. And that is whatever your intent was, whatever you're putting out there, it's going to come back, right? So negative intent brings negative outcomes, right? So in that sense, I don't need to do anything. It's not my job to do that. It's my job to control my own karma and teach my children how to control theirs. It's not my job to decide what your karma is, because at the end of the day, I don't know your intent. I know what your action was, but I don't know what your intention was. And those things don't always match. And so I think that we have to be careful running around judging everybody's intentions by their action. We don't know their intent, and you never will, nor is it your job to make that decision. If you're a religious individual, you can say, hey, that's between them and God, right? If you're not a religious individual, you say, hey, man, that's your business. That's between you and however you decide things in your life. It's not my job to run around correcting everybody. It's just not. And so I think that's what we got to be careful of. That's why I don't like the whole tit for tat, because I'm once again, I'm expecting you from me, or me from you. I'm
Right.
expecting, I'm trying to find my own thoughts and behaviors in you, and we're two different people. When it comes to, like I said, sending back to school, in my case, I'm on the fence, right? Like, I agree with a lot of people that I would love to just send them back to school, man. It's going to be a big, huge pain in my butt to have them here at the house and try to juggle doing our shows, taking care of the dogs, having my wife do her home stuff here, having my other one
Right.
do her. It's going to be a circus in my house, and it's not going to be easy. And yes, cost effective. And now I got to buy food for breakfast and lunch and everything else instead of just sitting them there. So it's not convenient and everything else. But even though I agree with those people who are doing that, I get it. Like you pointed out, I'm in a situation where I have to take things differently. So for somebody to judge me based upon keeping them home and not knowing all my intent and things of that nature, I think that's where it's dangerous. And I think we have got to stop doing that. It's not my job or my role to decide what you're doing is right or wrong.
Right.
It just isn't. Real quick before we do your wrap up, Marissa said that's what drives me nuts that many aren't talking about. The other tests that got ignored for this. I know two people who missed cancer tests. One cancer came back, the other was scheduled for surgery. By the time she got it, the cancer spread. And then Simon touched on his tit for tat thing. He says, I'm saying that's why so many people use the tactic. It's effective. Well, I think we convince ourselves that it is effective. But I would argue if we really look back and look at the actual like the stats from it, I don't think it's as effective as we think it is. I think it's effective of making us feel good at the moment, but long term, I don't think it's that effective. Like for instance, I think Louis, you said it better than I've ever heard it said in my life, and it really gave me pause to think. And I'm gonna say this last statement, and then let you do your wrap up, and that is, I was very much about corporal punishment when I was a kid. Like growing up, after I got like in my early adult ages, right? When I was a little kid, of course, I hated it because my mom used to spank me. And right now, I don't. But there was a period of my time where I thought that you needed to spank kids, right? My whole phrase, and we're on the internet, so I can say this: there's nothing a good ass whooping can't solve, right? That was my thought process, and because that's the whole thing is right. You do something wrong, I spank you, you learn your lesson, you're good to go. You're going to grow up to be this well-behaved adult. But one time we were talking about this, and you were taking your devil's advocate approach, and it was a very simple statement that it just boom in my head, and you're like, yeah, that's because nobody in prison ever got spanked, right? And yeah, there was a lot of people in prison who got not only spanked but like beaten, like so you would think the higher severity would mean that they're even more unwilling to do stuff, but it doesn't work that way. You can only rule with an iron fist or have quote unquote punishments for so long before eventually the person says, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna do it anyways. Like you can't break a spirit. Puppy training. You can't just keep beating a dog for peeing inside. The best way to do it is to give them treats when they do go outside. They associate positivity so much better than negativity. So I would argue that the tit for tat, we convince ourselves because it just feels better to say, yeah, they learn. But I don't think if you really look at it, I don't think it's as effective as we think it is. But you got any last words or comments you want to say?
Yeah, yeah. On that particular thing that you had said, it's because we think of the short term game, and so initially it may feel effective, but for our long term goals, it may not be. But also, a lot of the stuff that we're looking at in regards to just people being more honest of, do they send their kids to school, do they not, what their real fear level is. Look, there's a lot of people right now that I know that own businesses that are still teetering on bankruptcy. And so when they have outbreaks still, and when an employee gets it, they've now started not saying something. At least where I'm at, I know of several restaurants that no longer report their employees being positive, because when they were doing that, they would have to suffer a 24 to 48 hour shutdown until they recleaned again. The whole neighborhood know that they had it, and then therefore it's slower to get ramped back up again. So some of these restaurants are no longer even reporting when there are people that are positive, even though the employees know it. They get sent home, and they just clean up, but they don't tell, they don't shut down anymore for 48 or 24 to 48 hours. They don't. say it to the public anymore. And I think what's happening is those kinds of decisions based on finances. I think that, look, the schools are not making these decisions on finances. The schools are making these decisions based on what do we as a community want to do. And I hope that every community has the vote the way yours did, Trinity, and the ways ours did. I don't know if other states are doing this. I think that that's a question we need to ask everybody. Is your state putting it out for a vote, or are they just mandating that your kids return to school? I'm hoping they did it like your school did and our school system did, which is it was put to a vote. And by doing that, you people have a voice out there. Now, if you're going to use your voice not politically, but use your voice to what you really feel should be the right thing to do. And if you're going to vote that everybody goes back to school and you're a person that does not have young children, then think about how you can help maybe offer some of your services for students. Help be part of the community to try to figure out how can we help the school. In other words, if you have a place of business that has some building, maybe you can be a satellite school or offer more venues. Or if you're a person that has money and you can afford some computers and some laptops, maybe some of your businesses can donate some computers and laptops. Because I hear people say, well, what about the people that don't have any money and they don't have Wi-Fi, or they don't have laptops and they don't have computers in their home? You're right. So what can we do as a community to maybe gain some of that money, put that money together and give it to them, so that we can start distributing it equally to every student, so that every student at home can have Wi-Fi and have computers, and then maybe more people will stay home. Maybe we can have some services where we have these central locations where maybe 3 or 4 kids can go to one location distanced and go to school all together. I don't know the answer. What I'm saying is, as a community, we can be more creative. If the school systems are asking this, it's because they need help with this. So let's be part of the system. Let's all help. If you're a homeowner, you're paying into your school anyway, so you might as well get involved with these kinds of decisions. Well, you might have the right answer for your particular community. I don't think it's a one answer for every community. So thank you for bringing this topic up today, Trinity, and I wish your family well in your guys' decision, and I hope nobody shames you guys for your decision, and I hope nobody gets shamed for their decision. That's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I appreciate that. We'll see, obviously, right? I think that for the most part, we're the guinea pigs in Florida, and so I'm sure that people will follow suit, depending on what works or what doesn't work around here. Before I get to any tips here, I want to thank everybody for watching. Appreciate you. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the little subscribe button. It does help us out. Appreciate it. If you got anything from this and you think other people would get some value, by all means, share it. It's going to be on all platforms, social media, things of that nature. You can follow us both on social media if you want to just see what we do when we're not on front of a camera. Well, I guess technically you would still be in front of a camera, but differently. He is at the Dope Doctor, and I am at the Dharma Guy. We are at WPSN99 or at Now Matters More. By all means, drop us a follow or a like and interact with us a little bit. So, as far as the tips here, man, I quickly jotted down just a couple of tips while you were talking earlier. Just some things that I think some takeaways, right? Because once again, we like to do the tips so you guys have some sort of an action plan moving forward, as opposed to just us sitting here philosophizing. So the first tip I have is just do your best to understand the perspective that you're in, right? Step outside your own ego and try to truly wrap your head around the perspective of your own situation and what you're doing and what's happening for you. As he said, you may or may not have kids, so you may or may not have a dog in this fight. So just understand your perspective realistically without the emotion. Just understand factually, this is where I'm at. The second tip I would say is make your decision based upon that. Make your decision based upon the right protocol for you and your family, and what you think best fits within what your goals are and how you see things and what your limitations are and what your assets and all those other things. Make those decisions based upon that. And then thirdly, and probably most importantly, is accept other people's decisions. Accept that everybody else around you went through that same process, and as much as you feel a conviction in your own decisions and how you wanted to do that, they do too. They went through a similar process and they came up with their own process and way of doing things the same as you did. So you appreciate that and accept that from them. Accept that that's the best decision for them, and it might not fit for you. And that's the beautiful thing of living in the society that we do, is we're all allowed to make those decisions for ourselves. So that's all I got for today. I appreciate you guys. If you're watching us on Facebook, feel free to stick stick with us for a couple minutes afterwards. I'm sure we'll have some fun topics to discuss, I guess. But as far as Dharma Time's concerned, I appreciate you guys, and now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.